Being human in this world is a curse. The lack of mana energy in our bodies doomed us forever. Mana is what rules our world. It is power in its purest form. Our only choice after we are born is to surrender to a life of slavery to those who wield mana, which is not so different from the life we have hidden out there. Many of us are killed whenever our encampments or villages are found. But this time was different. They came to destroy, but no one died that night. Specific humans were chosen and taken away from their families. That's when some of us decided to strike back. The first thing you see in this game is a forest. This is where an immediate mood is set for the rest of the game. The art style is beautiful. The characters are quite simple. Heck, they don't even have faces. But they're in a world that is far more complex than them. Just look at the trees behind where you start and just observe how much effort was put into the background of this game. Everything has a darker hue with blues, greens, and purples flooding this first area. And the music fits quite perfectly. It's somber and ambient while still creating an atmosphere of adventure. Then you begin to walk on the trail in front of you. Some helpful stones tell you how the game is played, and then you shoot your very first goblet. After you flip the switch and walk through the gate, you are greeted by a man named Liwei? I'm gonna go with Leeway because he's a pushover. Leeway comments on the strange gates and stairs in the middle of the forest, and then he basically tells you to just waltz right into this mysterious staircase. However, he can't come because his cart, with nothing on it mind you, won't fit. A likely excuse, Leeway. Anyway, you walk down the stairs to what I'm guessing is the lower level of the forest, and then you fight a wolf, grab a blue rock, and meet up with Leeway again. He goes on about how if we're ever gonna save the lives of our friends and family, we need to set up encampment and boring stuff like that. When he comes to an immediate stop, when he realizes our blue rock from earlier is actually something called a rune, a storage container for mana. Leeway says he can use the rune to make a beacon of light and attract other travelers to our location. Okay, I have two questions. One, if Leeway can use a magical device, can I trust him, seeing as how he said himself that it is very illegal for a human to have one of these, yet he has spent enough time in their presence to know how to operate one perfectly? Two, ignoring my trust issues, won't a giant beacon of light attract a little bit more than just other travelers? I mean, seeing as how we are in a monster-infested forest, I don't think that it'd be a good idea to give away our exact location. It even said in the beginning of the game that many people died whenever an encampment is discovered. So tell me, Leeway, are you trying to get us slaughtered by every available monster in the Wolfbane Woods? Well, I guess I'm just paranoid because just travelers show up. No monsters, no mention of monsters, just travelers. Only travelers. Leeway, look, man, I'm sorry about being so quick to judge your plans. You know, I think it's just the fact that I'm out there risking my life, fighting monsters more powerful than I could ever dream to be, and the fact that I am the only one currently doing so, it's just kind of getting to me. You're not a pushover. You're just the kind of guy who'd rather stay at camp and hand out flyers to passing travelers than, fight for the livelihood of all mankind. So what do you say, buddy? You forgive me? And would you mind helping me out in the dungeon for a little? I'll search for volunteers and come back as soon as possible. You know what? Forget about it. Screw you, Leeway. Screw you and your wagon. I'm gonna tell the chef to stop feeding you until you actually do some work. You hear that, you lazy bum? No more food till you grab a bow and get your wagon in that dungeon. And don't come back unless it's with the eye of the beholder. You got that? Anyway, let's get into the meat of this game, which is, of course, the combat. The combat revolves around you shooting the enemies from a distance and dodging the enemy's attacks. This is easier said than done, of course, because unlike a different bullet hell game, let's say Enter the Gungeon, the projectiles in Mana Spark move very quickly, and the majority of the foes you will face use melee weapons instead of ranged, which means that they themselves move incredibly fast, which means you have to dodge even faster. Although this isn't too bad in the beginning, it does get much more difficult when you get to the tight rooms of the dungeon with both traps and enemies flooding the place. Thankfully, you don't have to rely solely on your bows to defeat these creatures. While venturing through the dungeon, you can buy equipment and upgrade them back at the camp, provided you have enough runes. Your equipment can range from everything to just a freaking bear trap to a tiny medieval torp turret.
My turret!
To a net that poisons people, to my personal favorite, the Estus Flask from Dark Souls. It might not be very good at first, but once it's fully upgraded, you get 3 heals of 2.5 hearts per peculiar room. The peculiar room occurs about once every 3 floors and is where you can buy the equipment and power-ups. The power-ups in this game are very interesting because while they give you something, most will take something away in response. This means that you can attempt to balance yourself by getting power-ups that only give you small buffs and don't take anything away, but if you're anything like me, you're gonna give up all your health for more attack. This is actually a pretty viable strategy. In this game, you don't actually want to find yourself in the middle of the monsters brawling it out because you will most certainly lose valuable life and it is very difficult to replenish it. It is much better to go the assassination route by upgrading attack only and backstabbing the enemies one at a time. This is also very helpful if you are good at dodging the boss's attacks, of course, because then you can just kill them much quicker. The first boss you fight is a beholder named the Knowledge. To defeat him, you must dodge his mortar strike and his laser blast, and then shoot him in the eye while it's open, kinda like Goma from Legend of Zelda. Be cautious of his minions though, because they will paralyze you and wait for the main man himself to make like a warlock and eldritch blast you to ashes. Once you kill the Knowledge, you save a fellow adventurer named Jessica the Crossbow Guard. Jessica is the second out of 3 playable characters in this game. Jessica is different from Ellis because she does less initial damage at the start with only 2 health, which means that she can get one-shot by an orc. But, in trade, she is the most agile of the adventurers. Unlike Ellis, she doesn't have to stop whenever she takes a shot, and also has a much faster attack speed. Instead of a dodge roll, Jessica has copied Tracer's ability to blink 3 times before needing a short rest. Jessica is the character I ended up beating the game with because her obviously magical abilities give her a knack for avoiding death. However, in my opinion, the third character, Wyatt the Warrior, is the most fun character to play in the entire game. You unlock him by lighting torches via shooting them through a fire and sending them ablaze. Once you do, Wyatt is free and you get to play the best character. I can't quite describe why I like the melee fighter the best, but there is something that just feels so right about destroying the sword-wielding skeletons with their own blade. This only gets better once you have the spiky shield power-up. This Pokeboy doubles your damage to the attacking creature. If you get the spiky shield, I highly recommend you bind it to your body through the sacrificial trial. If you do so successfully, the shield will stay with you, even after you die. Once you have the shield bound to you, fighting the second boss, the dragon, is incredibly easy. Simply wait for 2 puffs of smoke and then shield. Soon enough, that dragon will impale its face against your shield enough times to make it start bleeding runes. After the dragon dies and you fight your way through the remaining floors, you will come across the Aberration Chamber. This is where you meet your friend, the final boss. The Aberration is one tough demon, and I'll admit I died quite a few times to this shape-shifting half-elf. And as it goes in this game, every time you die, it's right back to the beginning. However, the game isn't incredibly long, so if you know what you're doing, you can get right back to the end in only a few minutes. So gather your strength, go back to the lair, and show that pointy-eared half-breed what it means to wield mana. When you defeat him, he reveals that he is proud of us? He says that we're his most successful mana experiment, and that we are now the strongest human because we have discovered the power of mana within humans. He then politely asks you to kill me! Kill me now! Now! So, you comply and exit the dungeon. When you finally return to the surface, blue sparks begin to glisten on your skin, signifying that inside of you and all other humans, there is indeed a mana spark.
I've finally done it! I'm the first human to have mana! What is my reward for conquering such a feat? You get this spicy burrito. Not only are you stuck at half heart for the entire game, but you also can't pick up powers now. Bon appetit, mana boy! Mana sucks.